But he misinterprets stoicism as meaning that I don't have any emotions. You know, misogyny is not just bad for women, it's bad for men. Hi, this is Jim Brand. Welcome to this YouTube channel where we discuss all things mental health. The topic of discussion today is toxic masculinity on social media. This is actually an issue that's becoming more and more prominent. And there have been some key players that have been driving this movement, so to speak, or this elevation in material online that is promoting very dangerous and toxic forms of what are considered to be masculinity. And I want to talk about the reasons that that's dangerous, and one key player in this whole thing, and that's a man that many people are familiar with. His name is Andrew Tate. Andrew, as a result of the hate speech that he was putting out online, and then the criminal activities that his ideology led him to, he's actually in prison in Romania on charges of forced prostitution and basically sexual abuse towards women. Speaking about him in particular, not that he's important enough to talk about, but he is kind of a figurehead for this issue that's been happening on social media. He was a kickboxer, very misogynistic in his views, eventually became an influencer on social media and spreading just all kinds of ideology that's based in misogyny. Now, the reason that these toxic ideas of masculinity are dangerous are because they're really based in ignorance, they're based in arrogance, anger, hatred, and they've been shown to lead to violence. A man that needs to be in control, that needs to control other people, that needs to manipulate other people, this type of personality tends to externalize their internal rage. Rather than working on themselves. And what happens is, because of this externalizing behavior, they blame other people for their problems. They feel that they have a right to project whatever sort of emotion or distress onto other people. Many of these men that are promoting this type of ideology show very strong traits of narcissism and even primary and secondary psychopathy. And we really cannot afford to normalize these behaviors. These behaviors are not normal. They're aberrant. Now, in Andrew's case, he seems to have learned his misogyny from his father, where he observed it and it was modeled for him. Beliefs such as women are at least partially responsible if they're raped by a man. That men should be able to treat women any way that they like. Now, he grew up in a small town with his brother in Indiana and part-time in England. And at one point, he fought really hard to become a well-known kickboxer, and he did have some success. And at that time, from what I've read about him, he and his brother were scrounging to come up with food to survive. And they did live through some really trying times. But he eventually became an influencer on social media and started really kind of cleverly propagating his brand, so to speak, utilizing the algorithms to increase his popularity. And the more salacious the material, the higher he rose in the algorithms. Started making money, started a quote-unquote life coaching business without any experience in coaching. And he started something he called Hustlers University, which was a paid platform that basically indoctrinated young men into his misogynistic ideology. Now, he speaks of himself as being a stoic. He considers his approach as a stoic approach, which is really a very serious misunderstanding of what stoicism is. It's another issue that's been driving a lot of material towards young men on social media recently, this idea of I'm going to be a stoic, I'm going to adopt this stoic philosophy. But he misinterprets stoicism as meaning that I don't have any emotions. And that's not what stoicism is at all. Eventually he started some kind of a networking group called the War Room, where he really kind of stressed, this rugged individual idea, which really is in many ways a fallacy, but that's another discussion. So even though he's been arrested, he maintains his innocence and reportedly has converted to Islam because he feels that Islam represents my values. I think many people who do adhere to that religion would take offense with that. So his father was abusive, he was a bully, and he learned abuse and misogyny from his dad, much the way that many people learn toxic behaviors. And he internalized his dad's views on women and toxic masculinity, that women are basically property of men to be used as they like. But continuing to perpetuate these views online, influencing a whole nother generation of impressionable young men, it becomes dangerous, because ultimately these types of views, misogyny is not just bad for women, it's bad for men, because it really normalizes this very warped view of what a man is, of what masculinity is. And it demonstrates really the opposite of what we think of as sacred masculine traits: protecting, nurturing, caring, standing up for the rights of others. And instead, what it does is it helps to ignite the darkest impulses in young men. It encourages them to base their value system solely in their own self-interest, in narcissism, greed, being shallow and hedonistic, and really having predatory thoughts and behaviors. And I really see this as a disservice to young men who really, really need healthy role models. That's something that's already lacking in our culture. Interestingly, from what I've read about Andrew, there were a lot of very successful and strong women in his family. I'm not sure how that plays into his whole dynamic, but eventually he made it to a reality TV show where he was actually kicked off because he hit a woman with a belt. And this, again, speaks to some of the values that he purports. I saw an interview with him where he was asked what he would do if some woman accused him of cheating, and he said he would hit her in the face with a machete. This is the type of person that young men have been exposed to online. Now, fortunately, he's been deplatformed for his hate speech, and he's not putting out more hateful material, but there are other people that have picked up that mantle and continue to promote this type of ideology. And there are other strings of thought that are connected to that as well. The incel movement, and something that people refer to as the red pill movement, which is a very anti-woman movement where men basically blame women for much of their problems in life. Now, there are various other groups that call themselves the red pill, including any number of conspiracy theory groups. So when I mention the red pill movement, many people mistake that or confuse that. But what I'm talking about is the men's movement that really is critical of women, blaming them for their problems. When we think of a generation of young men who are desperately looking for healthy role models, and what they find instead is somebody that normalizes their darkest and most misogynistic fears and control fantasies, what this does is it really drives them into archaic and toxic ways of thinking about what being a man is. It endorses values of misogyny, adolescent binge drinking, abusing women, grandiosity, narcissism, and even sociopathy. So, again, the question is, why are we even talking about this man? And it's not to make him more well-known, but he's an example of a lot of the toxic masculinity being promoted on social media. When you have a generation of young men who are desperately seeking healthy role models and looking for a script to help them understand what becoming a man really means. When they find a script that tells them that not expressing your emotions other than control and aggression, and rejecting anything that's feminine, and seeing retaliation and violence as a strength, it's leading them towards really, really toxic images of what being a man is. And these are the people that eventually they get into fights because somebody looked at them the wrong way. And they think that that's what being a man is just being, you know, a badass. But surely we can do better than this. After centuries and millennia, surely we've learned more about human nature and being relational human beings than this. Because what people like this really promote is almost a cartoon caricature of what being a man is. It's like the cartoon of a caveman dragging a woman by her hair. There are much more healthy versions of masculinity that don't turn men into caricatures and don't promote violence online. I'm curious what your thoughts are, and I encourage you to put some comments in the comment section and start a conversation. If the videos are helpful, I encourage you to like and subscribe and sign up for notifications so we can let you know when there's more material coming out. And until next time, take care of yourself and take care of each other.